Please grab a seat and welcome to the second edition of our International Interdisciplinary Gender Equity Movement Symposium. Our organizing team, which I'm representing here today, is delighted that so many of you followed our invitation today. First, a couple of words about the framing of the symposium as an action of the Gender Equity Movement, or GEM, at the Paris Brain Institute. This biannual symposium series forms part of the Gender Equity Movement Roadmap, which we published in 2019 in Nature Human Behavior. The overarching goal is to raise awareness about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to identify good and productive practices which provide solutions to our biased academic and societal programs. The Gender Equity Movement has many other actions besides the symposium series, including a nationally coordinated monthly journal club with our partners, notably at the New York campus in Bordeaux, in Marseille, and elsewhere. And this also includes a website that is currently in the make, where we will actually publish the insights, references, and video recordings of today's event. This symposium furthermore aligns with the Gender Equity Charter, which our committee drafted together with the directors of the Paris Brain Institute, acknowledging that gender diversity and equity are enriching factors in all human activities, and particularly within scientific research. Indeed, in some of the many consulting interventions that we provide as members of the Gender Equity Movement, we are faced with comments doubting about the benefits of implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion into the academic and societal culture. While such principles to most seem to be morally the correct ones to follow, data confirming the benefits of such proceeding unfortunately remain underemphasized despite many of the scientific papers published on the topic, and I only listed a small fraction for you here. Hence, today's symposium is dedicated indeed to providing such evidence that implementing DEI principles is of benefit for all of us. And today's invited experts will share with us today their data and insights into such potential cultural shift. Hereby, we will touch upon inclusion as a major key principle, as well as the importance of different dimensions of diversity, including diversity in research teams, in research methods, as well as in research questions. And lastly, this symposium also forms part of the financially supported action plan for gender equity at the Paris Brain Institute. I do not know if you're aware of this, but such gender equity action plan was introduced by the European Research Council in 2022. So we, as the GEM Symposium organizing team, want to thank the Paris Brain Institute for generously financing this event today. And we'd also like to thank the policymakers for complementing bottom-up approaches such as ours with top-down accelerators. In the next couple of slides, I want to lay out why a focus of this symposium today is on diversity and what made us name today's event the Power of Inclusion. This scientific symposium gathers international renowned scientists from multiple disciplines, including cognitive sciences, neurosciences, linguistics, social sciences, and even philosophy. It addresses people from all backgrounds and helps us learn from errors that we all commit. Indeed, the reason for focusing on diversity and inclusion is due to the input of our scientific experts from the symposium in 2022. Should you have missed the first edition and wish to learn what we did in that year, please do find our English and French video recordings on the according YouTube lists. Just one example from what we have personally learned and implemented ourselves. With the acknowledgement of the presented data and arguments of the 22 edition, our movement changed its entire identity. Our originally chosen name and logo, the XX Initiative, pronounced the cleft between societal categories instead of resolving them. We furthermore had anchored ourselves in a binary concept of men and women and based the name on biological sex instead of societal gender roles. Mistakes that we have learned from ourselves and that we have reverted. But so, why are we all here today? What do we expect from today's symposium? What do we want to learn from our scientific expert panel? What is hidden behind the title, The Power of Inclusion, and why is inclusion a key principle of a thriving workplace in academia, the public, and the private sector? If we would Google the term inclusion, we would find the following first two definitions. First, inclusion is defined as the action or state of including or being included in a group or in a structure. However, as a second definition, we stumble directly across a definition borrowed from the DEI context. Inclusion is defined within the framework of equal or unequal opportunities due to group biases. And lastly, borrowing from the field of organizational behavior, inclusion refers to an individual sense of belonging, both regarding formal as well as informal processes at the workplace. So why did we choose a focus on inclusion? Professor Kaiser Smelman in the 22 edition, and she will be actually with us later today, provided data showing that pronouncing diversity might actually be counterproductive, given the emphasis and reinforcement of societal group boundaries and the related causing of group identity threat. Instead, in her 22 study, she demonstrated that focusing on inclusion was of benefit for all, given that the focus is on the individual and not on a societal category. And I'm sure that Kaiser's colleague, Professor Maria Guadalupe, who is one of our experts today, will provide further insights in these aspects in session 4. Inclusion has yet another dimension. I think there is no need at all to repeat to this audience that gender bias exists in pretty much all of the evaluation metrics used in the academic system. I think we all know that women publish less. They publish in less important author positions and in less prestigious journals than men. Articles by women are less cited than expected. Women get relatively fewer funding, are less likely to be recruited, and judged as less competent than men. Out of many examples, I highlight the study that Professor Naomi Ellemers presented in the Symposium in 22 also. Ellemers and colleagues, like others, demonstrated that female candidates received less funding, and that was the case in the Netherlands in that study. And this was not due to the quality of the proposal, nor the knowledge utilization, but due to a worse rating of their quality as a researcher. And well, this study has been replicated in other countries showing the exactly same effects. So what consequences does this have? What does it actually mean for the individual trying to pursue an academic career? This might mean, for example, that facing much more barriers, women require more time and more perseverance than men. When hitting negative outcomes more often, Naomi Ellemers explained, a candidate, of course, is expected to drop out more easily than someone who is experiencing less obstacles. Hence, the question is whether opting out of the academic career pathway is actually a choice or a consequence of a feeling. And yes, let's dare to say it. Maybe the leaky pipeline in STEM is all about a feeling after all. It seems really strange to address emotions in the context of science and academia, where we assume everything is objective and neutrally regulated and measurable according to strict metrics that are applied in the same manner to everyone. Yes, maybe in the end, inclusion is about an emotion. Maybe it's about a sense of belonging. Maybe this is about imposter syndrome and the consistent questioning of being in the right place given the cumulated failures experienced in a biased academic world. And maybe this comes all down to the need of hearing individual voices telling their stories. And I want to draw your attention to a column in the journal eLife that I think we all appreciate. It's the Sparks of Change column. Here, researchers around the world share moments that illustrate how research culture is or should be changing. And I just put here a testimony of Dr. Tania Espino-Sanchez, published in the September edition of eLife last year. Dr. Tania Espino-Sanchez is the daughter of a Mexican immigrant family and a young mother in academia who struggles to persevere in life sciences. And I must admit that I have been really deeply moved by reading Tania's lines that I put up for you to read here, and I invite you to read the full article. And she shares her feelings of consistently needing to prove that she deserves to be where she is, to the world and to herself. And I think that such reports are complementary to actual data studies, showing the importance of taking into account an individual's behavior and an individual's perspective, and the notion of inclusion as a sense of belonging. And lastly, I also want to take the critique that Tanya is addressing in the last comment. She addresses movements like ours and actions like the symposium today. Indeed, we are unable to judge another individual's perspective and experiences. And we are still, unfortunately, missing mentoring programs that keep students on their track despite the biases and discrimination they face. And yes, we need to consider bringing in a cultural change towards inclusion. Hopefully in these couple of words, I've been able to convince you that inclusion indeed has the power to change our biased academic, public, and private sectors. There are plenty of data out there that show that inclusion might be of benefit for all of us, but we don't know yet how to quite get there. Hence, in today's symposium, we are trying to explore the thematics of inclusion from very different and complementary angles. In session 1, we start off by breaking with the binary vision and focus on individual behaviors and metrics other than sex as a factor to explain behavior. Session 2 will then explore developmental angles of gender bias, spanning the field of linguistics, developmental, and cognitive psychology. Session 3 will look into sex and gender research in academia, including notions of philosophy, artificial intelligence, and the Indian caste system. And lastly, Session 4 tries to provide a practical perspective on how diversity and inclusion might benefit all of us. The German Symposium organizing team would like to thank again and to express our deep gratitude to the speakers today and to share their expertise and insights. We would like in particular to thank the speakers who accepted our last invitations and this was due to several last-minute cancellations requiring an update of the program. So please note that in your badges you will find a program that has not the most actualized list of speakers. And I wish all the speakers who couldn't make it today a fast and smooth recovery, as well as for all of us that there will be a time where we don't need to be afraid anymore of backlash effects and that we can maintain the courage to speak up and say what we have to say. Organizationally, for on-site participants, we provide coffee and lunch breaks in front of room 1-2, which will be on your left, as well as in front of the auditorium during the here indicated times. And we'll close the event by a cocktail reception after 6 p.m., also for on-site attendance. And we would like to warmly invite you to stick around for these moments of social exchange. We have received numerous registrations from different places in the world, reflecting the interest in the topic and the symposium series. And we thank you all, also the online attendants, for being with us today. If you're online, please share your questions and feedback that you might have already during the sessions in the Zoom webinar chat. We will address your questions as well as the questions in the audience during the roundtable discussions following all presentations. Please note that no questions will be asked directly after the talks for a smooth and timely proceeding. And should you have missed the information, we also have a simultaneous French translation option that you can access as illustrated here and as explained in the emails that you have received for signing into the webinar. Also on-site, if you want to use this option, you will need to log into the Zoom webinar using your personal headphones and cell phones and select the French translation channel. And now, I wish us all an inspiring day with surely amazing talks and stimulating discussions. And with no further delay, I now hand over to Daniela Dominguez for the first session.